Okay, thanks, Johnny. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and a very warm welcome to our 5th virtual UK-Israel Business Breakfast. Today's topic for discussion with our esteemed panel could not be more topical, namely working in business and supporting our healthcare and beyond. The widespread effects both here and in Israel of the dreaded COVID-19 virus is what it's all about. We're currently in the middle of the festival of Sukkot, or Tabernacles, which, like other pilgrimage festivals of Pesach, Passover and Shavuot, Pentecost, has both agricultural and historical origins. Sukkot is both the autumn harvest as well as a remembrance of the Israelites in biblical times wandering through the desert before entering the land of Israel. As such, we build and live in, or at least eat in, Sukkot, temporary booths, doing our best to recreate the insecurity of the nomadic experience of our newly liberated ancestors. Sukkot reminds us that we are vulnerable to the natural world from biblical times to the present day, and no more so than with the present pandemic. But that subject will be discussed shortly by our panel. Firstly, I'm again delighted with the numbers who have joined us this morning. We're becoming a very popular event. Apart from our members, we're pleased to note there are some attendees who are experiencing our UK-Israel business event for the first time. We hope that you and our other guests will become members and help us to continue our work. We need more members. And just for the benefit of newcomers, UK-Israel Business was founded in 1950 as the Anglo-Israel Chamber of Commerce. We encourage and support bilateral trade and investment between the UK and Israel. It was previously known as the British Israel Chamber of Commerce, and has a network of over 2,000 companies and 10,000 business leaders, and works closely with the Department for International Trade, the British Embassy in Tel Aviv, the Israeli Embassy in London, and the UK-Israel Tech Hub. UK-Israel Business is a bilateral chamber of commerce. It's non-denominational and non-political. It organises a wide variety of events and delegations in the UK and Israel, including, when COVID-19 is over, conferences, business breakfasts, roundtable events, and business delegations here in the north, and business delegations. In the northeast, where we are, it's more difficult to find direct connections between local and Israeli companies, but we're determined to change that. And today you'll be hearing that we have one connection not very far away, in Castleford, to be frank. In fact, we've had Israel representation on our previous 2 panels, and as I say, today is no exception. So since our last meeting in September, Israel has been struggling, as we have, to contain the COVID-19 virus, and it's not been helped by the comings and goings over the new year, over Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. However, whilst they, like us, have a fight on their hands to keep control, they have managed at first, namely, Israel is going to be the first country to ban trade in fur. This is an announcement that was made by the country's environmental protection minister, and the announcement was welcomed by animal rights activists, and the UK branch of the Humane Society International said it's exciting news from Israel. So once again, Israel is a leader in various things, but this is something new. Of course, for every meeting, we have to thank our important or vitally important sponsors. Our main sponsors, Town Centre Securities, where I believe Edward Ziff is on the call today, and Big Change, and Martin Port is with us today. We're really grateful for their continuing support. And of course, our partners, we're also grateful for their support. We have Fleek Marketing. Johnny is there and will be our chair today. Mitchell Wealth Management. Stephen Mitchell and Charles Mitchell are attending, and Stephen's on the panel. My own company, Murray Harcourt, Chartered Accountants. Sky Group, Mark Rothwell is here. Chef Works, Paul Gross, he's also on. Black Solicitors, Nick Dyson. We've also got J-Life, Elliot Landy is here. Elliot runs J Life, and Hospitality and Events North magazine. So if anybody has a good business story, he's always looking to publish it. And today we're also delighted to have with us Lee J. Walker, who is the Managing Director of the Business Desk. The Business Desk, as some of you may know, but not all of you, is an online business newspaper. You can get it free every day. It covers the whole region. And I'm proud to say that some time ago, I was one of the founders. But it's worth you going on that to have a look at what's happening in the region in business terms. And you can always get in touch with Lee J, see if you have any ideas for working together. Not represented today, but still partners are the Ideas, Martin Daly, and last but not least, Berries. Unfortunately, Simon and Jeff Walton are not able to be with us today. So we're grateful for all our partners. And we also work with the Department of International Trade, and they are, again, one of our partners. So we've had some outstanding speakers, and today's no exception. And we will be having another breakfast, hopefully in November, another virtual breakfast, because sadly, we don't think the government will allow us to have get-togethers in real time. Before I introduce our speakers today, I'm very pleased to welcome Karine Levy, who's the new UJIA community shlicha in Leeds. That's Israel's representative in Leeds. She arrived in Leeds in August 2019 as UJS campus's shlicha, dealing with students. And she's very excited to also be appointed as the UJIA shlicha. Originally from Afula in Israel, and before she moved to Leeds, she lived, studied, and worked in Jerusalem. She studied for a master's degree in international security and diplomacy. You need that in Israel, after gaining a bachelor's degree in international relations and politics. Karine worked for 2 years at the Prime Minister's office and worked as partnership coordinator in the Jewish Agency for Israel. She's very much looking forward to be working with the community in Leeds, in schools, Makor and the Zone, and to bring Israeli content to the community. I'm sure you'll want to join me and wish her a happy and successful stay in Leeds. So now to our esteemed panel, which I'm delighted to introduce. Firstly, Esther Wakeman, who is the CEO of Leeds Cares. Leeds Cares is a charity partner of Leeds Teaching Hospitals. It supports NHS staff to deliver the best care for over 1 million patients and their families each year by raising funds for equipment, services, education and research. Leeds Cares works collaboratively with all the hospitals across Leeds, including Leeds Cancer Centre, Leeds Children's Hospital, St James's University Hospital and Leeds General Infirmary to identify charitable projects and courses. Working with local communities, schools and businesses across the city and the wider region, each year it provides around £5 million in additional funding for our hospitals, which is so important. Stephen Mitchell, who was a long-time supporter of UK Israel business and one of our partners. He's the founder of Mitchell Wealth Management and was a foundation representative for the St James's Place Charitable Foundation. Stephen was instrumental, with the help of our very own Jane Clines, in launching the St James's Place Yorkshire Children of Courage Awards, an event which attracts over 700 guests every year to recognise the achievement of some of Yorkshire's finest children, whilst raising thousands of pounds for national and international charities. As I say, Stephen has been a member of UK Israel Business for many years. Last but not least, I'm delighted to welcome Jack Mizcodd. He's the Senior Manager of Corporate Affairs UK and Ireland for Teva Pharmaceuticals. Teva is an American-Israeli pharmaceutical company with dual headquarters in Petach Tikva in Israel and Parsippany, New Jersey. Teva in the UK and they are situated just down the road in Castleford, centre of the universe. They're a leading provider of medicines to the NHS, enabling millions of patients in the UK to live better days. Jack recently relocated back to the UK to take up his role following 10 years in Israel. Before working for Teva, he worked for a boutique consulting firm in Tel Aviv and served in the IDF's Civil Administration Unit in Ramallah, coordinating the activities of the UN, Red Cross, and other international organizations working in the area. Last but not least, we have our facilitator, Johnny Ross. Most of you will know Johnny, and you've heard him in this role before. He's cheerful and lively, as always. He's the founder of digital marketing specialist at Fleek Marketing, an award-winning company. Fleek works with a wide range of B2B and B2C businesses, and with both public and third sector businesses. Johnny has over 20 years experience in digital online technologies, specializing in SEO, data, user experience, and digital marketing. We're grateful to Johnny, as always, for not only agreeing to facilitate the panel discussion, but together with Jane Kleins, organizing this Zoom presentation. So over to you, Johnny.
Brilliant, thanks, Colin. So let me just introduce the speakers. Esther, if you want to put your mic and camera on, and Jack as well. And bear with me 1 second. Colin, where are you? So yeah, thanks for joining today. Just to remind you, if you've got any questions, please do ask them. You've got the Q&A box and you've got the chat box. If you've got a question, please do ask. Also in the chat box, if you want to network or share your LinkedIn profiles or whatever it might be, change the drop down to panelists and attendees before you type anything, and that will make a big difference. And lastly, we've got networking at 9:45. There's already a link in the chat. I'll remind you again, and hopefully I've programmed this so that when Zoom closes, when I close this webinar, it will automatically take you to the Zoom meeting for the networking. So we'll see if that works. So thanks for joining us. We've got a really talented bunch with us today. So we've got Esther, who I've just found out is a marathon runner. We've got Jack, who you're learning to play the banjo, is that right? And we've got Stephen, who's often found kicking a football around in the back garden, but also was the first Jewish Jesus in Jesus Christ Superstar. But you also found singing nursery rhymes in with the grandchildren. Is that right as well, Stephen?
Absolutely right. Yeah.
The interesting bit was around the singing, because I'm really confused at the moment. I think in the south of the country, 6 of you can meet up and sing together, but in the north, that's not allowed. You can sing in pairs outside or something ridiculous. How did we get these rules so confusing and so wrong? Any thoughts on where we are right now and how we've got this so wrong? We're all in Yorkshire, aren't we? Esther, what's your thoughts?
Well, I'm actually in Derbyshire, so it's even different here to what it's in Leeds. So yeah, you have to be careful. I heard on the radio somebody was saying that somebody over their back fence had different restrictions to they had. So it does seem to be very interesting the way they decide who can and can't do different things.
It's seriously confusing. I want to go straight into a question, which is around coronavirus and COVID. And actually, I wonder, especially that we've got Jack here from Teva Pharmaceuticals, we've got Esther from Leeds Care, interested in initially your 2 opinions. Are we focusing too much on COVID? Have we got this wrong with regard to lots of crucial treatments, chronic conditions? Should we be concerned? You must have, Esther, you must have a reasonable picture of what's going on in Leeds teaching hospitals. I know that you're only there to support them, but you must have some idea. What are your thoughts on that, Esther?
I mean, I can speak as well from personal experience. So sadly, my mum had a diagnosis just as we came out of lockdown for breast cancer, and I mean, they got her in, did an operation, and she was out again the same day. So there are operations happening and other treatments going on. A friend of mine had a little baby, had heart surgery on Monday. So that there are things going on, and I think it's just an impossible situation. You can't do right for doing wrong. I think whichever you decide to do, you're probably going to think you should have done the opposite. So I think that the government's actually in a very, very difficult position at the moment to know what to do, and I think that's probably why it sometimes feels like it's a bit all over the place, because the information they're getting all the time is changing.
Well, Jack, from your point of view, from Teva Pharmaceuticals, are we missing out on the chronic conditions and those treatments?
Yeah, I think I don't know if I would say that we're too focused on COVID, perhaps not focused enough on other conditions in parallel. And I know we're certainly seeing particularly chronic conditions, whether that's asthma, migraine, the day-to-day. There's definitely been an impact, I think, and I believe there was quite recently a survey of the Patients Association where they surveyed around 1,000 patients, and I think something like 67% of patients reported having appointments cancelled. So I definitely think there's been an impact, and I think it's not just about the healthcare system as well. I think that patients are a bit hesitant to go back to the GP surgery. You don't know how it's going to work with PPE, face coverings, or feel like they're not deserving of treatment because they don't have COVID, and there'll be a drain on the system. And I think it's always important to remember, being healthy isn't just being COVID free. Health takes many shapes and forms, and I think it's really important that people continue to have access to the treatments that they deserve and need.
Stephen, are you more fearful of going to the doctors?
No, I go regularly. No, I'm not, because I think that there are other issues, and I heard from our head of foundation that things like cancer diagnosis, it's 60% down from previous times. But the fact is, as Esther's just said, it's not going away. We're just kind of kicking the can down the road as far as that's concerned. I also am very wary of things like mental health, because we're focusing on something which is very important, which is a pandemic, but actually the repercussions of that in terms of mental health and other issues like cancer are kind of not forgotten, but ignored to some extent. And I think that's just we do have to focus on COVID, and the government do have to be seen to be acting. And all I can say, Johnny, and I know everybody uses the word confusion, but I think we need to be a bit more positive about it, that we're trying to do the best we can. Everybody's trying to do the best we can, hopefully. And it's actually, if I want to know something, I just go on the government website about Leeds and I look at it and I find out. So we can be immersed in all this confusion if we want to be, but we can also sort of take responsibility ourselves and see what we need to be doing.
Yeah, I think that's fair advice. Stephen, you were instrumental in setting up charities. You're part of the Yorkshire Children of Courage, St James's Place Charitable Foundation. Just tell us the story. How did that happen, and how long ago are we talking in this?
Well, we're talking about 11 years ago, but I, as part of my role as head of the foundation for the Leeds office, I go down to London once a quarter, and we have presentations from charities from around the country and even around the globe asking for money. And every one was a worthy cause. It was very, very difficult. And I just thought that we all try and do these fundraising activities like golf days and summer balls, and I just wanted to find something that was a bit different. And we sat down in a sort of a group, and Jane was one of the group, and we sort of put ideas together like white collar boxing and just sort of ideas that we could have of a fundraising event. And it was just amazing that from sort of just bandying a whole load of ideas around, we came up with something that eventually became the Yorkshire Children of Courage. And I remember the first one was at a hotel in Harrogate where we had 200 people, and now we're at an event which, when we're together, is over 700 at the Royal Armouries, and just an amazing black tie event. And I'm kind of very proud of it, and Jane can be as well, and everybody who's involved in it. And it's just a great occasion to see the faces of the kids who are recognised, because there are, I mean, this is Yorkshire, but in fact St James's Place have taken this on board, and they've done a London one, a Birmingham one, and a Scotland one. So it's becoming a great fundraising event, whilst obviously giving something back to the children.
It sounds brilliant. David, Israel's just asked a question. I'm going to come back to fundraising and charity in a second. I just want to take us back to COVID for a moment. Jack, David's wondering if you can comment on the news this morning of shortages of NHS COVID and cancer tests. Is Teva and its suppliers able to meet the demand for this?
Yeah, I think supply and demand in the pharma industry is notoriously tricky. I think, and it's quite a complex supply chain that sits behind the product that you see on the shelf in the pharmacy. But I can't comment on other companies in the industry, obviously, but I know at Teva we've been doing a lot of work on the robustness of our supply chain. I think actually where we differ to a lot of the other pharma companies is we're a bit less reliant on supply chains that begin in countries in the Far East, so China and India. We've got quite a few manufacturing sites in Europe, in Israel as well. So I think in terms of the supply chain, we're in a slightly different position. And in terms of supply, we've been planning for Brexit, for example, for 4 or 5 years now. A lot of those kind of protocols were transferred over to deal with the COVID-19 situation. We saw huge spikes in demand back in March and April. We had guys and girls in the distribution centre and our manufacturing sites, pretty much working 24/7 to meet that demand, and we, on the whole, succeeded. So I think. I don't know about the specific situation in terms of COVID and cancer tests, but I do know that I think the whole industry has recognised that we have a real responsibility here to step up and do our best to maintain supply for patients at the end of the day that need these medicines.
But am I hearing that there is some low stock in certain areas then, even within Teva?
Well, I think across the industry that there's always stock issues, and that can be for a multitude of different reasons. There could be a change to the packaging, which means you need to go back and get it approved, or there could be an issue with an advanced pharmaceutical ingredient that you need to deal with. So I think across the industry there's always going to be medicines that are out of stock for a certain amount of time. We do our best to mitigate that. But I think on the whole, the situation, certainly for generic medicines and day-to-day medication, seems to be pretty stable at the moment.
Okay, Esther, your background was from the Ashgate Hospice Care in Chesterfield. How did you end up at Leeds Care?
Well, it's a good question, because I loved working in the hospice sector. It's very rewarding, and it was really when I saw the role advertised and the fact that so many people I spoke to had a huge amount of respect for Leeds Teaching Hospitals and the work that goes on there. And it really felt like the charity was a bit of a sleeping lion and had potential to really grow and do a phenomenal amount more than it's doing currently. And I love a challenge, so thought it would be a great thing to be involved with. And also I think, when you're fundraising for a hospice, you're fundraising for the day-to-day care, which is really important. But one of the huge benefits of fundraising for a hospital is everything you're fundraising for is very tangible. You can see the benefits of it immediately. So the other week I went in to watch an operation in full PPE, I might add, where we had through donations to Leeds Cares, funded a machine called an air seal, which meant that operations that had stopped because of COVID could then continue again. And it meant that the surgeons could use a robot, which was also funded through donations, to be able to carry out operations on children who were younger, because the trauma to the body was a lot less, the recovery time's a lot quicker. And so when you're able to talk to donors and say, actually, if you give to Leeds Cares, it can make the difference immediately to being able to save a child's life, or in this case, over 100 children a year benefiting, from this piece of equipment. So it is a fantastic charity to be able to lead, and I think as well the connection across the hospital and seeing the dedication of all of the NHS staff. They're so patient focused. It is remarkable how hard they work and how dedicated they are to their patients. So they come to me and they're so passionate about needing a piece of equipment, or they want to complete a piece of research, or they want a waiting area to be renovated so it's a better experience for their patients, and they care so deeply that it makes it easy then to be able to go and talk passionately to people about why we need funding, and the immediate difference it makes.
I can only assume that being in a position myself where we were very reliant on the NHS as a family, and became quite attached, that was a trigger to fundraise and donate. I can only assume that still must be happening where families are closely touched, or is just all fundraising and donations just totally being wiped out?
No, we do have some remarkable families. One that you may, if you follow us on any of the social media channels, you'll have probably seen a baby called Rue Owen, who his family have raised over £30,000 now for Leeds Cares. And they have been sharing their story. I'm in tears most days reading or seeing the picture of baby Rue, who's recently just had another brain surgery. And, again, it's an operation that's done using equipment funded by donation to Leeds Cares. So, we've got so many touch points with different patients. It's our, the play therapists that we fund that are, putting a smile on his face when he comes out of surgery. But the fact that they're sharing their story, and people are giving, because people don't give to organisations, they give to people. So when people have had first-hand experience of Leeds Cares or the hospitals in general, and they talk about it, that's what prompts people to give. And I think we'll see more and more of that as all the traditional methods of fundraising like events are put on hold. I think we'll start to see more donations coming in through people sharing their stories and giving in that way.
You've got we should mention you've got a golf day coming up next year, haven't you? Yeah. And do we go to your website to look at more information on that?
Yeah, or the best thing to do is to contact me, and I can connect you with somebody to give you a call and talk through it. But it's on Friday the 14th of May. So I have to say we're selling out quite quickly. So if you do want to take part, if you could get in touch with me so we can make sure that you get a slot. And the other thing with the golf day is we're hoping to have an auction at the end of the day, and that can often raise more than the golf day itself. So if anybody has any money can't buy type prizes that would really help us raise a significant amount of money, or if you know any celebrity golfers that might be willing to join us on the day and present some of the prizes at the end of the day, and I'd really love to hear from you.
Well, we've got some very influential people in the room, so I would hope that they can answer some of those what desires for you. Stephen, you talked about how you were innovative with regard to coming up with ideas on events for the foundation that you talked about. What do charities do now? How are we going to turn this corner? And because the government put some funding towards charities, but I don't think it's touched a lot of them. I think it's been very small amounts. Any thoughts on how we're going to turn this round, Stephen? I know there's quite a big ask there for you,
listen, I mean, I'm listening to what Esther says, and the thing is that more and more, we all rely on the people above, the government, whatever the sort of governing authority is, to help us out. And I just think it's so much now about us taking individual responsibility to say, what can we do? Everybody says charity begins at home, and of course, charity does begin at home, but it mustn't end at home. It's got to go further than that, and we all have that kind of responsibility to help. I guess the thing about the St. James's Place Charitable Foundation is we're very focused on helping people less fortunate than ourselves, and I don't mean that in some kind of superior way. It's just the fact that there's always somebody worse off than we are, wherever you look at whatever level we're talking about, and it's taking that responsibility. So charities are really struggling. I know that. I know that, for example, I heard that Macmillan are laying off people, making redundancies. This is a major, major charity. The Cancer Trust making redundancies. That they're losing. Macmillan have this coffee morning, sort of national coffee morning, where I gather they wish to raise sort of £20 million, and they've probably raised a third of that. So we all need to take responsibility. I can understand for what Esther says, that once you get involved in a charity, and this is the kind of the beauty of it, really, there's some amazing individuals and amazing charities there, and it's just sort of finding out what they do and trying to support them in whatever way you can, because they desperately need your help more than ever now, the charities.
You talked about taking responsibility. You've mentioned that a couple of times, and I fully agree. I listened to a podcast, Jordan Peterson, very controversial to some people. I don't know if any of you have heard of him, but he very much talks about taking responsibility for you. It starts with yourself taking responsibility, and I think you've hit the nail on the head there, really. Jack, I'm curious. How did you get into pharmaceuticals? You've got a PR background, quite corporate background as well. What was the path into pharmaceuticals?
Oh, well, it feels so long ago now. I think I've been with Teva 7 years, I think. And, I started out, I actually studied international relations at Leeds University. Found myself in Israel a year later, and followed the path of kind of IDF service. And Teva, I think actually it wasn't the pharma industry that attracted me. It was actually Teva. In Israel, it's probably the biggest company in the country. It has a really long and rich history, and actually probably the first company. I think nowadays we read a lot about high-tech companies doing exits, and I think it's probably the first company that kept its roots in Israel and expanded out to the US and Europe, but very much still maintains its home base in Israel. So I think from a Zionist perspective and Israel perspective, it's a really great company to work for with a really great history. So I was really attracted to Teva and the culture there, and I think the farm industry, I think, let's be honest, it has a bit of a bad rep sometimes, I think. But I think when you look at particularly the power of generic medicines to bring down the cost of healthcare, I think Teva and a lot of companies are doing really great work to try and expand access to medicines, and there's a lot more work to be done. But it's a really exciting industry, I think, to be in, and you touch a lot of people, which is really great.
You lived in Israel for 10 years, is that right?
Around 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, as the UK-Israel business event this morning, what are your thoughts on how we could work closer with Israel, how we could buy more, sell more, how we could collaborate with companies in Israel?
I think, particularly being back now in Teva's UK head office, I've seen there's a very interesting sometimes interaction where you have on calls, work calls, you know, people from the Petah Tikva office in Israel and people from the Castleford office, and there's definitely sometimes I think a culture clash, and I think perhaps the first step is understanding. I think the business mentality there is very different, and anyone I think that's worked with Israeli companies or worked in Israel will see that it's very much an ideas driven, I think, economy, and perhaps a little bit less about the implementation. And I think that they're quite kind of complementary you know, skills that the UK industry and the Israel industry have, you know. So I think there's definitely room for synergy. I think anyone that wants to approach Israel and the business community there and get involved, I think probably just have an open mind. Don't take it personally if they're screaming and shouting at you from the other side of the room, or the camera now, I suppose, because it's certainly not personal. It's just the way things are done. Yeah, I think if you open your mind and your heart, you'll find some really passionate people that have some really amazing ideas. And it's about taking those ideas and I think can sometimes perhaps bring them down to reality a little bit and seeing how they can work on the ground. But yeah, I think there's definitely room there for synergies and working together.
I was about to say, how would you describe the mentality? Is it that sort of crazy and fast? How would you describe it?
I think chaotic probably is a good word. I would use a polite word, yeah. But actually really invigorating as well, and you know, there's a lot to be said for taking that passionate approach and being really, you know, really passionate about what you believe in and what you want to achieve. And you know, I don't think we would have seen half of the companies come out of Israel that we have, and half of the innovations, the inventions that have come out, if that kind of passionate, kind of can-do attitude didn't exist. So it certainly got the country very far, I think.
Stephen, you're nodding away there. Is that was that connecting for you?
Well, you know, I think travel does broaden the mind, and having been very lucky in previous jobs to have travelled around different parts of the globe, people have different cultures. You know, we have this sort of British mentality that about the French and preconceived ideas. I can't tell you how hospitable the French were when I was working there, and just how amazing. You know, I was invited to a wedding of somebody that I'd only met the day before. I could never imagine that happening in the UK. And the same thing with Israel. You know, they're not afraid to make mistakes. It's a different culture, completely different culture. But you know, when you're traveling to France, I was afraid to speak the language, which I spoke okay, because you don't want to make mistakes. And in fact, they just appreciate you trying to make the effort. And in the same way, you know, Israel, we have this preconceived ideas that it's confusing, but actually it's a fantastic culture for entrepreneurship. You know, this is why they are a leading country in terms of ideas and things, because they do it and we talk about it, and there's a lot. You know, I do think that, you know, actions do speak louder than words, something I learned from my parents very early on, and I think that in the UK, you know, we're kind of very good at judging people and judging things, but you know, we should be prepared to sort of think outside the box, do things and come up with ideas, and if they don't work, try something else. You know, Esther's saying about the way charities are changing, but they'll carry on because they have to carry on, and they have to think of different ideas, different ways of doing things. But it doesn't mean you just give up. And you know, maybe there's too much of that here, where it's terrible and we moan about it. But let's try and be positive.
Yeah, I mean, well, I feel for the event industry, but again, you know, I think a lot of them are looking to the government for a solution. But actually, you know, this is about the mentality and going out and trying different things and making it work. And I guess
worry. I'm sorry to interrupt, Johnny, but it kind of, you know, it's all blame somebody else. It is the blame culture, and I know everybody. It's a terrible situation. Terrible for so many people, and it can get worse for so many people. And you say about the events industry, but it's not going to go away, and it's for all of us as individuals to say, what can we do? And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But rather than looking for handouts,
We've lost
and there's,
Stephen.
the government have done these emergency funding to charities, but it won't last forever. It's like furloughing for a period of time, but it'll go away, and then obviously you've got issues further down the road.
Esther, did you get were the handouts? Did they reach you?
So we've had no government handouts. I think it was if you furloughed staff, and we have a small team, so we weren't able to furlough anyone. We wouldn't have been able to continue doing what we're doing. Most of the fundraising team got redeployed during the height of the pandemic to receive. We were very fortunate in that a number of businesses wanted to donate food and other things for the NHS staff. So a lot of the team were, working as logistics experts. And I think it goes back to what Stephen's saying is, if something's not working, you have to reinvent yourself. You have to take responsibility, to do something positive. We did receive funding from NHS Charities Together, which is the umbrella charity for all NHS charities, and they had people like Captain Tom and Joe Wicks doing fundraising for them, which was great. But what I'm hoping, one of the things that will come out of this is that because people maybe don't have as much to give, they will think more carefully about who they give to, and actually think about that relationship that they have with the charity, because local charities often suffer more because they don't have big marketing budgets, so they really rely on that relationship fundraising. And we're very lucky, our chair Edward Ziff has a personal reason for supporting Leeds Cares, and that makes a big difference actually, when the people connected with the charity have a very genuine connection and a very genuine reason for wanting to support it. And I think if you have got a limited amount to give, actually maybe sort of spending a bit more time thinking about who you give it to, and is it going to have the biggest impact, then it will mean that more donations will be well spent. And I think local charities, they do need that support now more than ever, because there unfortunately are a lot of people requiring that support from charities now.
If you could give a tip or two to some micro local charities, what are the things that you're trying right now to try and reach out and create those relationships?
So the biggest thing for us is being able to share patient stories. So when we give money to a specific area of the hospital, we ask for a story that really helps to underline why that gift is so impactful. So a good example is a few years ago we received a legacy, which meant we could fund a new research centre. And there's a story on our website, a little boy called Jack, who has a muscle wasting illness, which means his life expectancy is about 25. Well, because Leeds is very good at clinical research, which means that they're actually working with the patients, and the patients that they're working with will benefit from that research immediately. So there is an opportunity there for us to find a cure for Jack's illness before he reaches his life expectancy, or at least to prolong his life. And I think that's a very exciting proposition, to be able to donate to something. But when you hear Jack's story and you hear his mum talking so passionately about wanting, obviously, her son to not die young, you really want to do everything you can to make a difference. And I think that's my advice always to charities, is you have to be able to use real life stories to show the impact that a donation will make, because that's what makes it real for people.
I know from my marketing background, telling a story is the best thing you can do. Jack, is that right for corporate affairs? Is that how you do things? Tell stories?
Yeah, I totally agree, and it's something that, from a, I suppose, corporate marketing perspective, I think the pharma industry has been pretty poor historically in telling that story, and it's something that we're certainly, trying to do, and we actually recently launched a platform in Teva called Life Effects, where we're connecting patients and giving them a platform, I suppose, to tell their story. And you know, at the end of the day, they have the inspiring stories and you know, coping with chronic conditions and how they deal with that day in, day out. And I think being involved in something like that has really shown me that, you know, storytelling it's a way to connect to people, and it's a way to build, I suppose, a community, and to make those connections and show that you're doing something substantial. So I totally agree with what Esther said. Yeah.
We've got Elliot mentioning that the J-Life Leeds magazine is just out. We've got Business Desk is watching, and you could subscribe to their daily email. If you do have any questions for Esther, Jack, or Stephen, now is the time to ask. Please do ask. Use the Q&A. David Israel mentioned earlier that it was Bosch warning that they may not be able to meet the demands for tests, just so we know from the earlier conversation. I wanted to ask Stephen, with your wealth management and investment background, when there's a crisis, there's always an opportunity. Where are the opportunities right now for investment?
That's a good question, but you're right, there are always opportunities. So you know, when people ask me when's the best time to invest, I always say now's the best time to invest. But obviously, you've got to have the resources to do it. But people think about investing, you know, a lump sum. And all we try and do, and I would hope that anybody in wealth management, is to get people into good habits. So good habits just means putting money away on a regular basis. You know, it might be a couple of £100 a month or whatever it might be, into things like pensions and investments. But, you know, I was just thinking, listening to the other panelists, that this is a tough time for most people, that there are always opportunities, but it's about survival for a lot of businesses. And if you can survive, there will be some who don't survive, and therefore there'll be more opportunities further down the road, whenever that might be. I just think that getting into good habits is a good thing as far as investing is concerned, and just carrying them on. That's it. But you know, I do understand that things are tough, and I'd almost rather that people gave money to charity than you know, investing for themselves.
Do you have any thoughts on our concern over the economy and on the pressure it might give our grandchildren, or you know, do you have thoughts on that, Stephen?
Yeah, I really do. But my thing all the time is that sort of worry about things you can control, and don't worry about try and react to things that you can't, in terms of being as positive as you can. So I'm really worried about the mental health of children. You know, one of our colleagues who we furloughed was telling me in the middle of it all, in May time, that one of her children, who still hadn't gone back to school, her boy of 8 years old, just lay on the floor kicking his legs in the air in frustration because he just wanted to be back at school with his friends. And stories like that, you know, it brings it home to me now that the kids are all grown up and the grandchildren aren't old enough, that the mental effect on kids, this is something which is a sort of a byproduct of COVID. The things that we actually were going to have to deal with so much further down the line, but which are so scary and worrying, but we can't deal with it now because, well, I mean, we can, but we've got to concentrate on the thing that's causing it all, and then deal with it. So there's going to be a lot of negativity, a lot of complaining, a lot of disappointment. But this is where I say, Johnny, that if we can try and say, what can we do to improve our lives, and what can we do to improve the lives of others, maybe less fortunate? You know, the disadvantaged are getting more disadvantaged. It's just going to be, it's going to get worse before it gets any better. But let's take responsibility.
Esther, are you seeing any stats in regard to a rise in mental health issues?
I mean, I've follow a lot of other charities on social media, and there's definitely a lot of data being shared by charities like the Samaritans and other mental health charities like Mind, around the rise in mental health issues, and there's also some charities that support younger people with mental health issues and the rise. And also I know from you know, my friends who have children, you know, a lot of the concerns that they're having around you know, mental health. And I think sometimes we forget that mental health is as much part of our overall health and well-being as our physical health is, and we need to look out for each other. And it's something that I'm really keen to do within my team, is to make sure that, you know, we're talking regularly, because I think probably something that everybody has experienced is that feeling of isolation, where if they used to go into the office every day and now they're more working from home, whether that's all the time or some of the time, that it can have a negative impact on your mental health, and you know, that can then roll down to other people in the family. So it's looking at what you can do to try and help people feel connected, and it's not going to be easy, I don't think, but it's again, that goes back to the thing of what can we do, what can we influence, how can we help.
Here's a question for you. My parents, we're in Leeds. The current advice, the current guidelines are: don't mix with another household, don't meet another household. I'm concerned about their mental health. What advice should I be giving my parents? Should I be letting them see the children, even though the advice and guidance is against it? Or does this have a detrimental effect? Are we missing some very good times, very good years, and or are we just going to make all this worse? I'm just wondering if you've got some personal views on this, and the balance. The government's got this balance of the economy and trying to balance the economy. Should we be trying to balance mental health?
I mean,
who's going to answer that one for me?
It's an individual decision, isn't it, Johnny? You know, I mean, you know what the government guidelines are, and you kind of know what the government rules are in terms of what they've said is kind of enforceable. And then it's up to individuals to say, and I can understand this, and it's a dilemma, and it's a bit like me saying, well, you know, I got a speeding ticket because I was doing 43 in a 40, and somebody will tell me, well, you broke the law, and I did break the law, but you know, is there a balance somewhere? And I know there's kind of 10%, but is there a balance? Should you be saying to your parents, or should you say to yourself within your family, I'm going to ignore this because the mental health of my parents is more important than seeing their grandchildren. And as a grandparent, I can understand that. Fortunately, I'm not in the same age bracket maybe as your parents, but you know, it is a thing. It's a worry about it, and my kids are more sort of, you know, they're more careful than maybe we would be. You know, they're saying, look, we won't come round. We're in the middle of it all. We didn't see the grandchildren, but the problem is if everybody does their own thing, you know, it's completely lost it. And to say, you know, to look at other people and say, well, they've done that and they've done that, comes back to taking responsibility.
Jack, were you going to give a thought there?
I mean, yeah, I think Stephen's comments on balance and responsibility are correct, but I just was struck when you asked the question about the video that I don't know if anyone saw, that I think went a little bit viral yesterday, with the funeral and the son wanting to comfort his mother and him being pulled apart pretty much by. And I think that's the kind of thing where I think there you need some balance, and you need to have a bit of you know, foresight and sensible thinking about, you know, that kind of society is not one that I think is going to flourish post COVID. I think we need to be looking at the bigger picture, balancing our, you know, collective rights and responsibilities with, you know, our responsibility to our friends and family and children. But that really struck a kind of chord with me. That video yesterday, I was actually quite shocked to see it.
Esther, just a final question for you. Do businesses have a social responsibility to support charities, and why should they engage with charities like yourself?
I mean, I think any relationship with a charity should feel like a two-way street. It should feel like you're getting a benefit as well as being able to give something back. So one of the key things we do with our corporate supporters is find out what matters to them. So it could be around staff engagement. That might be a key factor of why they want to get involved with the charity. So then we're looking at how we can help to support that. And that could be, like we did recently, we had a family member come on a call like this to a whole team of employees to share their personal story of Leeds Cares, and that definitely got the staff very engaged and wanting to then go and do some form of fundraising for us. But I think there is that sort of feeling, and I think Stephen touched on this a little bit around, if we all do well, we all do well. And if you think about Leeds as a community, and if your business is doing well, and actually you support your local NHS hospital, whether that's research or equipment or however you want your donation to have an impact, then it's maybe you, your family, your employees that will then actually be benefiting from that piece of equipment or piece of research that you funded. So I think there is definitely a responsibility about thinking very much about your community and how you can have a positive impact. And, you mentioned it at the start of, Colin mentioned it at the start of the call, 1.2 million people come through Leeds teaching hospitals every year. So the impact of, supporting Leeds Cares is phenomenal on local people. And, obviously I'm going to say that because I work for Leeds Cares, but any local charity, making a gift locally is going to have a positive impact on local people. And that's where I think companies can make a really significant difference.
And I think on that note, we've given everyone some really good food for thought today. It's been really enjoyable to get this conversation going, and I thank you. Stephen, were you looking as if you had something to say there? You might. No, okay. I wasn't sure.
To say, Johnny, but not on that occasion. Thank you.
I wasn't sure. I'm going to bring Colin back in, and I'm going to remind you all that we in just 2 or 3 minutes we're going to swap over to a networking Zoom. If you want to do that, the details are in the chat right now. As I said, hopefully when I close this down, it should open it should give you a link to open it anyway. But really, thank you so much for the panelists today, and I really enjoyed that conversation. Thank you, Colin. Your microphone needs to go on then.
Yeah, well done. Yeah. Thanks, Johnny. I think you all agree that our panel today, as always, ably facilitated by Johnny, have more than maintained the standards that we've come to expect at our virtual breakfast meetings. I thought Johnny's question to the point, how could we collaborate more with Israel, was so key. And the response from Jack and Stephen summed up the position. Israel is an ideas-driven economy, but a different culture. So have an open mind and don't take the way Israelis react personally. So many thanks indeed to Esther, Stephen and Jack for their contribution. And of course, again, to Johnny for his usual excellent facilitation. And please join us now for the networking session. And we look forward to seeing you all, metaphorically, at our next meeting. Thanks very much indeed.
Take care. We'll see you in the Zoom meeting now.